Hi everyone, welcome to the 25th episode of the Social Good podcast. Today we have with us Anna Luzader. She is the founder of WhereTu and also of Anna Luzader Coaching and Creative. Thank you so much for joining us today, Anna.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited for this discussion today.
Yeah, so we actually know each other a bit. We met in Seoul, I believe 3 or 4 years ago, was it? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, a long time ago. That was a weird time, COVID times in Seoul. So I know that we were all like scrambling to kind of find connections and keep connections with people around us. So yeah, I'm glad that there were opportunities to do that despite all of, the hecticness in the world at that time.
Yeah, I remember I like through the Meetup app, I um was hosting like a tech, I believe like a tech meetup for a couple
Yeah.
of months, and we met and we talked a little bit about like your time at One Heart Africa, right? Which is another
Yeah.
nonprofit that you founded.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Yes. So I started One Heart Africa in technically 2011, but we were incorporated in 2012. And is that correct? Man, that feels like such a long time ago. But yeah, so I was in university at that time and had been working in Southern Africa for a while with some partners there, developing education, like schools in Mozambique, and also a farm in Eswatini, and moved there and managed things for a while, but got severely severely burnt out in the process. And I decided, oh, I'm just going to go to Korea for a year and teach English, and then that turned into 6 years. So it was a very, something that I did not expect, but I absolutely fell in love with Korea, fell in love with Seoul, and loved my time there.
Okay, so how did that lead you to like where you're at currently? And you're located in
Las Vegas.
Las Vegas,
Las Vegas.
Nevada. There we go, there we go.
Yeah, so very different. I never thought I would end up living here, but I think really the main thing that kind of led me to being here was just that One Heart Africa taught me to be adaptable, and also taught me that there's so much in life to explore and discover. So when I first moved to Africa to like manage One Heart Africa, I was 24, 25. So I was in my early 20s. And it's funny how you really think you have everything figured out, right? You're like, oh, I've been to college. I started this organization. I know what I'm doing. And then I got there and I realized I have no idea what I'm doing. So I could either take that and be like, kind of, I don't know what I'm doing. Let me run home and kind of get to a safer place where I do feel more comfortable. Or I could be like, that means I have so much to learn and discover. So that's what kind of planted that seed with why not try? And so everything that I've done in my life since then has kind of followed that same path of why not just try? Why not try? Yeah, and that's kind of how I ended up in Korea and working for the companies I worked for in Korea, and how I ended up where I am now.
Big was your nonprofit exactly? Like, because you're literally 23 years old.
Yes, yeah. So our first year, like financially, we went from $10,000 in donations to over $200,000 in donations in 5 years, like annual donations. So that was like quite a big growth to handle, being so young and having no idea like how to do any of that. But as far as like the what we were doing on the ground, so we had a village in Mozambique that we worked with called Lisilo. And in that area, there was a school that we built, a preschool that we built. We had a feeding program, multiple wells, like 3 wells, and then building a clinic. And then in Eswatini, where I lived, it was like a teaching farm, like a 20-acre teaching farm with
Okay.
aquaponics and huge like employment base. So that was really a core of the mission, was wanting to be a good ethical employer for many people in the community. And then we had like feeding programs with that as well.
What do you mean
So
by ethical?
yeah, great question. Okay, so especially in, I would say, vulnerable communities in Southern Africa, there there isn't a lot of job opportunities. So the country that I was working in, primarily Eswatini, had at that time like over a 50% unemployment rate. And because of that, there would
Even
be a
in the
lot of
farms.
Yes, yes. Even with, there were a lot of businesses coming in at that time from China and other parts of Asia. And the story that we heard a lot, or that I heard a lot from my neighbors, was that they were asking them to do very like unethical things to get jobs. And then when they were employed, it was a very abusive situation. So the wages were very low. The health and safety hazards were very high, and you can't build a community when those are your structures. So that was a really big like guiding light going into that community was, okay, how do we focus on family and on employing women who really are the backbone of this community, and kind of exploring what that looks like.
Yeah. Like, how did you guys like manage as far as, your metrics and your donations and cash flow and stuff like that? Like, yeah. How did you manage
Yeah.
that, like the line between that and um, dealing with like one-on-one with individuals?
Ooh, that was really difficult for me, and the short answer is I hired out a lot. I
Oh,
I realized that that was something that I didn't want to be doing. I wanted to really keep my sights on where I can have the most impact and like what I feel like my skill set areas are, and that was not one of them at the time. So
okay.
I found I got references for a like financial person in the States, like where the organization was, where one part of the organization was registered, and then had a local accountant. Like I had people handling the nitty gritty of the money in that way. Um, but with it being a nonprofit, you are very accountable to your donors. So I just wanted to know really like how can I be the best reporter for the donors, and how can I like provide the most accountability for us, and so that they know that their donations are safe and that we are actually doing what we said we're going to do.
What was your like favorite part of running One Heart Africa? Yeah. What were your most valuable, I guess, personal lessons?
Yeah, oh my goodness, there's so many. And actually, as I get older, I look back and I see more, like as I'm more separated from that. Um, whew, I really learned the value of wisdom, I guess I would say, in the sense of seeking that out. In any place in my life, that's been something where I'm like, I have to seek out people who are wiser than me, because there's always someone who is wiser than me. And as a founder, that's like really important, because people are looking to you all the time for leadership. And a lot of times there's this pressure to feel like you have it all figured out and you know exactly what to say in every situation. And that's
Yeah.
just not true. So,
Okay. Okay.
being able to have people in my life who really do have like a very solid grasp, that was huge. And there were a few very key people in the community that I really leaned on. So that was one. But then I also just loved discovering Southern Africa not as a tourist, especially as like a foreigner and a white foreigner. We're we're taught all of these things about Africa that just aren't true. So getting to discover and kind of debunk a lot of the things that I had learned about Africa growing up. It was really valuable, I guess I would say, and I still am absolutely just like in love with that part of the world and hope to go back like as soon as I'm able.
Was that like was that like a important part of like conveying that story to, to your donors, like to try to entice them per se to donate more? Or what was your storytelling like?
That's a great question. That's a really great question because you can see, if you go back and look through the stories that were told, you can see how they evolve from the time that I was, going back and forth, and then the time that I moved. Because going back and forth, it was like I was an outsider telling a story and looking in and being like, okay, the language kind of shifted from them to we.
I see, I see. Oh,
Yeah, because I then felt like I was a part of the community and the story. So I think it's a really hard line to walk when you are involved in a nonprofit organization, and when I always say like the sexy storytelling is what brings in donations. But knowing that, would I talk about my neighbor this way to get donations, Like that, knowing how to, again, like tell stories in an ethical way was a really big part of the learning curve for me. And the way I told stories completely changed from when I started the organization to when I, left and handed it off. So
what
that
was the
was
hardest part of running?
Ooh, I think honestly leaving, because I knew that things were not healthy for me. Like I knew that it was part of my story, but it wasn't part of my future. And when I started it, like when I was part of the founding team, I thought that this would be my life forever. Like I was planning on living there for the rest of my life,
Really?
and oh yeah, and like that being what I do, like my whole entire identity. When I knew that it couldn't be a part of my future, at least for now, like it wasn't healthy and I was actually in a very unhealthy spot, making that identity shift from like One Heart Africa being my whole entire identity in person to then having to like discover who I am by myself. That was really, really difficult.
I see. But you were financially okay from running the nonprofit?
No, I would say.
I see.
So it was that part was very hard, and it didn't really have anything to do with the donations that we were getting in. It was more of like I would say values, a conflict of
I
values
see. I see.
between the leadership team. So there were
I
people
feel
who really
I feel
go
like
ahead.
as women we have like this gut feeling of when something is a little bit off and like we want to steer a different direction or kind of stray away from something. Yeah, I feel like that's something that I don't know if like women are better than that, but
Yeah. There is this like intuition, isn't it? There's like this inner kind of knowing, because I was the only woman on the leadership team, and there were so many times I sat in meetings and I knew that we were doing good work, but I knew that there were things that I could not put my finger on that were off,
just
and it kind of all came to a head in 2018. And there was some theft and some like betrayals within our team, and that was kind of validating.
just
But it also, I mean, like when I left One Heart Africa, I truly had zero, like nothing, because I mean, my house was One Heart Africa owned, my car was One Heart Africa, everything was owned by the organization, and that's why I decided to go to Korea, because I knew I could get a job teaching there and they would provide everything for me. So I moved there as like a way to kind of reset my life, and thought like, oh, I'll have a year to get back on my feet and then I can move on from there. And then I didn't, I stayed.
How long were you in Africa in total?
In total, working there about 8 years. So I would go back and forth for many of those years, and then I lived there for about 4.
Yeah, I mean, what, how much of your lessons were like business based? Yeah. And how
Yeah.
much of that do you carry with you today?
Wow, a lot about integrity and ownership, I guess I would say. Because, again, like being the only woman in that on that team was very difficult in the sense that I was also the only one that had, I want to say, like the qualifications to be there. So I was the only one with like a college degree in human development and business, and had a like a resume. I had worked at other nonprofits before, so I knew kind of that sense, but still I was put at the bottom of so many decision making moments because I was a woman. And so
Yes.
that was a huge lesson for me. And like, don't let anyone try to minimize you because of whatever they're insecure about.
But so at your own organization, you were at the bottom of decision making?
Yes, there were so many times where, like I am an executive at this organization, and the others um, would, like outvote me, or just not even listen, to be honest. Kind of act like I wasn't there, but that's a heavily cultural thing too, in the area that I was working in, and kind of with the other founders as well. It's just not like women are supposed to play more of the submissive and subservient role. So
I
that
see.
wasn't like a good match for me. I can't
Well,
do that.
why did you choose Korea after? I'm kind of curious.
Ooh, yes. Okay. Well, first and foremost, when I was in college, I had a friend who was from Korea. Like his mom was from Korea. And we went to their house and had dinner one night. His mom cooked Korean food for us. And I remember that night being like, okay, whatever happens in this life, I have to go to Korea at least once, because this food is like the best food I've ever had. Ever. So I put it on my list that night, and I was like, I have to. Um, and then I went on like a sabbatical, we'll call it, for a
Okay.
few months, like while I was figuring out life in Africa. And went to a few like Southeast Asian countries, and then ended up in Korea for about a month. And I just loved it. Like as soon as I was there, I felt like there was something for me there.
Okay.
And so I started researching ways that I could move there, and saw, the teaching, the E2 visa.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, perfect. This provides all of the things that I need at this moment in my life. And so I'll go try it out.
Did you enjoy teaching? Because I've done my share of teaching as well.
Yeah. So my first teaching experience, I did not enjoy at all. It was like a franchise hagwon, and they did some shady stuff. Oh my God. We could
Really?
talk the whole podcast about the things
Oh
they
my
did.
goodness.
Like identity theft. They were stealing foreign teachers' identities when they left, and then going to take out like loans in their name. It
Goodness.
was it was crazy. During COVID, they tried to make us, like, force us to sign over our rights to our bank accounts, saying that they could go in and look at our bank accounts and track where we had been spending money, to make sure that we weren't like breaking any rules. Uh, it was, man, it was really insane. But then I got a job at an international school, and that was much better.
I see.
I loved teaching there. The people I taught with were great. The school was great. I just got to the end of that year and was like, I don't want to be an English teacher for the rest of my life, so time to move on.
I see. Yeah, like, um, I know that international schools have kind of like a different policy from the franchise hagwons, so to speak, which are like the academies
Yes.
for South Korean students.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like do you think the teaching style and like actually philosophy was very different?
Yeah, it was really different. And I mean, mostly because I was only teaching kindy. Like I had one class, and with the academies, the hagwons, you're teaching like 7 classes a day. There was a time where I was teaching 10 classes in a day, and they were different age groups and all of that. So with the international school, it was more insulated, I guess I would say. Like these are our students, and you only have those students. And then the workload was very different in the sense that the school day went from 9:30 to 2:30 every day, and that was it. You didn't have like, oh, here's the after school kids. Here's like the high schoolers that are coming in at
I
five
mean,
o'clock or whatever.
from what I know, you have to pay an arm and a leg for the international schools in Korea, right?
Yeah, I really wish I knew how much this school was. I'm so
They didn't tell you?
curious. I want to look it up so bad. I'm always so curious. It was in Sochogu, so not like the Daechi or those like very very fancy areas, but I still had quite a few students who their parents either like worked overseas or they had been raised in a different country so far and they had just come back to Korea, and so it was I liked the parents. The parents were a lot different.
But that just kind of makes me wonder, like, like, is that value justified? Because it's actually kind of like close to like private college tuition in the States. Like,
Yeah. I also wonder too, and these are things that I didn't know those things kind of going into it. I had no idea how any of those systems worked, and then the more I knew, the more I was like, I don't know how I feel about being a part of this, Yeah. Yes, but I will say of the schools that I have heard about, the school that I taught at, I have a lot of respect for in the sense of like how they treated people, at least like how they treated their staff and their students.
for sure, for sure. Yeah. So, can you talk a little bit about like your transition from like your One Heart Africa, nonprofit founding, and then um, your coaching and creative, and was the coaching and creative like in tandem with your teaching in South Korea?
Yeah, it kind of has been
Mm-hmm.
something that's followed me throughout my career. So I've had a lot of time where I'm in like this liminal space. I'm in like an in-between space. And during those times, I've always pursued the creative freelancing side of
Okay.
life.
Okay.
So from the time that I quit One Heart Africa, I started freelancing, and so kind of built like this personal brand that way in terms of copywriting and marketing and social media management,
Okay.
and that being something that I would kind of peek my head in and out of. So in times where I wasn't full time, didn't have a full time job, then I would pick up a lot of freelancing jobs through Luzader culture and creative. And then also as I got more into the international expat immigrant world, that became more consulting people how to move abroad, consulting companies on how to work in an intercultural setting, and doing more of that work as well. So
So
it being like
does the cultural factor like play into your like social media? Um, work as well?
Yeah. Yes, and definitely when, well, let me back up. So before I started off on my own and was doing more of social media management for other companies, the other companies that I was working for always had an element of cross-cultural something. So one was like an intercultural management company, and then another was like an author who had written her book while she was in Korea, and it being about like, you know, living this life between cultures and also lessons learned there and kind of that whole world. So it kind of just followed me around, I guess I would say. And I'm happy about that because it's where I love to live. I love to live in the international space. So I was happy about that.
Yeah, what was your like pivotal moment um from then until now?
I would say there are like three very pivotal moments. And the first was what we already talked about with leaving One Heart Africa because feeling like I was going to be there forever, right? And so that being a huge identity shift moment. And then the second I would say was after teaching, I decided, as we talked about, I don't want to be a teacher forever. So let's just give it a shot. And so I switched to a job seeker's visa and was looking, which is when we met, I'm pretty sure, was when I was in that area of like
Okay, yeah,
job seeker's visa.
that's true, that's
Um,
true.
yeah, so I was going after really any opportunity I could, and I ended up getting hired at Edelman Korea, which is
Yeah,
like the a major name in PR, like a huge
yeah, yeah. I
and
saw I saw that on your on my LinkedIn feed, and I was like really happy for you.
it was crazy, and I feel so silly saying this now because my sister is like a PR professor, and so I was actually in Tennessee visiting them for the first time since I moved to Korea when I was going through the interview process, and I had two offers. I had one for like a boutique kind of marketing agency, and then I had one for Edelman. And I was talking to my sister about the offers, and I said, here's the companies, but I'm not sure. And she just like, she was like, stop everything you're saying right now. What are you talking about? You're gonna accept the job to Edelman. Like, you're going to. I don't care what you have to say. Like, there is no other choice. You have to accept it. And at that point, I knew nothing about the company. And so I felt really silly after Googling it and being like, oh my gosh, are you sure they hadn't made a mistake? Like, are you sure that they meant to hire me? Because that seems like it's not real. Um, so that was really, really a pivotal moment of being like, okay, first of all, I can stay in Korea. That's a huge thing, and I'll have a visa to stay in Korea. But also,
Yeah,
now I'm writing for these big companies that I have always heard of, and
correct.
they're like household names, and that's crazy. Like, I'm writing for them? What? So I kind of had to grow up really fast in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to grow really, really, really fast. And then
Did
during that,
Edelman did Edelman live up to its name in your opinion?
ooh, um, let me think. So it lived up to its name in the sense that brilliant people work there. And I got to be on the same team as still some of the most brilliant people I've ever met. So being able to learn from them was incredible. What I did learn though is that corporate life is not for me. Like, I am not a corporate girly at all. I can't do it.
Yeah, I
So,
think we might have discussed that a little bit when we met because just because of your experience with One Heart Africa and all.
yeah, yes. That was a really big shock for me uh, because it really is like learning a new language. Like, you have to learn a different culture being in a corporate office. And so it
Exactly.
was like corporate office is a different culture. Also, corporate Korea is an even different culture than that, you know? So it was
How
kind
long
of
were
like
you at Edelman for?
for 2 years.
For 2 years. Oh, okay,
Hmm.
okay. And you didn't have
Yeah.
to like work in Korean or anything?
I didn't write in Korean, but I mean, most of the meetings I was a part of were in Korean. So I kind of would just be like, okay.
Well, I mean,
Um,
what were your takeaways from Edelman?
hmm, um, my biggest this is going to be such a silly take, like silly, but my biggest takeaway was that the people who get where they're going, so like the people who end up at as like a team leader in Edelman, they're not necessarily the best at what they do, but they act like they are. So that was a huge lesson to me because I grew up thinking like the reason why these people have not these people, but the reason why the executives get where they're going is because they truly are the best. Like you line them up in the room and they are the best. And that's not true. That's not always true. They
They just
are
act like they
really,
are.
it's what?
They just act like they are, or have the confidence.
Exactly. They have a lot of confidence and they're really, really good at personal branding. And so I walked away from my time at Edelman with like, okay, personal branding is a really big deal. And whatever you build, like that has to be incorporated with it, especially right now when, like social media is such a big thing. And we are seeing how CEOs don't just have their company brand, they have a personal brand. So that was like a really big lesson that I walked away with.
I see, I see. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about WhereTu and how that's going. What's your
Yeah.
journey been like?
Okay, so the third biggest pivot moment was me meeting my fiance in Korea. Um,
Yes.
because I was like, there is no way I'm moving to Korea and dating an American. Are you kidding me? That's not going to happen. And yet it did. And so I met my fiance, and he is in the military.
Okay.
So doesn't get to necessarily choose where he's going to be. And so when we were, our relationship was getting serious, we're talking about marriage, we're talking about all of those things. A subsequent conversation was also, and I'm getting stationed somewhere else in a few months. Like I will be moving. So we kind of have to figure out what this means. And being in Korea, especially, I would say like 2 years in, I really started having this like huge dream of starting my own company. And that being the ultimate goal that I was working towards was, I was going to teach English and then I was going to transition into a different job. I was going to do like, I did KIIP, the program. I
Isn't
got
it
to level
KIPP?
3, K
Knowledge
Korean
is.
Immigration and Integration Program.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I
Yeah.
have in mind the teaching program over in the States.
Oh,
Okay.
different programs. So it's the one where you get like points on your visa, and it helps you get an F visa, like the long-term stay visa. So that was my goal. Like I'm working towards an F visa. I am going to stay here long term and have my own business, right? And then when Alex and I met, like that had to pivot a little bit. Um, and so I was like, okay, well, this is sad in the sense that I'm moving back to America. But this is great in the sense that I can finally start the business that has been on my mind for years at this point, and the business that I wish I like the services, the help that I wish I had when I was moving overseas, like when I was settling in these new countries and I had no idea what I was doing. What is a visa? Why do I need one? what paperwork, all of those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Yes. So that really led me to starting WhereTu. And it was actually like I was just kind of dabbling around with it right after moving here. And then I joined a startup incubator. And at the end of that incubator was a pitch, like a pitching competition. And I won the seed round funding for it. I did get seed round funding, and so I was able to, like actually register the business and start a website and really get those foundational pieces in place. And now we're growing, and that's really exciting because I get to like help people move from America to different countries, especially Korea, and build a better life there and do it in a sustainable way.
Where are your clients based?
They're all based in the US. So they have to have a US passport. And so they're all just like random places around the country. A lot are from the South because I'm from the South. And so I think like my stuff just naturally gets shared kind of around my friends and family that are still in Tennessee. So like word of mouth is very, very beneficial for me right now. But then I've just had people from Minnesota and people from the West Coast and people from Florida. They kind of find me on social media, and I love.
What region
I love
are
it.
they? What region are your you know?
Ooh, a lot of them I'll be very candid. So a lot of them have just realized that the kind of dream that we were sold in America doesn't exist anymore. Like the if you work hard, then you'll succeed. That kind of is not true for a lot of us. With the way that prices are heading, and they're like, okay, if I'm going to be in this position where I'm renting my whole life, or I'm working a job I don't love, I'm going to do that in a place that at least has accessible healthcare. It's like the trade-off where people are looking at their future here, thinking, I don't know that this is the best option for me. But then so I would say that's like half, and then there's another half who is just, they want to experience a different side of life. Like they want to experience what it's like to live in a different country and learn from those experiences and grow. And I love that because that reminds me of me 10 years ago. It's
I
just
think it's
curiosity.
possible for people to have like families and move around like so often, like say every year or every 6 months.
Oh man, I think that's really tricky, and it's a lifestyle that now I'm very aware of because of the military, and a lot of my friends, they live that way and they have kids and they have a family, and every 2 years they're sent to a different place. So I think it's possible. I think it takes way more support than just a single person needs. So with me, like when I'm moving just with myself, I can only worry about myself. Like I'm just worried about me. But when you have an entire family, and especially kids, like young kids, they have a lot different needs than just a single person has. So being able to like provide what children need especially is the big hurdle there. Mm-hmm.
People need to have like a certain minimum income in order to be able to, be your client per se.
Oh, no, definitely not. So I have, again, as I've built WhereTu, this sounds a little selfish, but go with me, okay? As I'm building it, I'm thinking about me. Who was I 10 years ago and what did I need? And I know that me 10 years ago could not have paid a relocation package of $1,500, Like I couldn't have shelled out that money. But I could pay $100 for like a meeting and a blueprint. Like I could do that. So I'm really conscious of of there being help at every price point, and I also do free consultations just to get an idea, to help people get an idea of whether a move abroad is even viable for them, and if it's something that is you know, a good next step. Because to be honest, not everyone should move to a different country. It's not a good choice for everyone. So I really want to help build those foundational pieces so that when people do make the leap, they're not just like doing it half-heartedly and they don't have a terrible experience that causes them to then get stuck in a different country, become broke in a different country, and then have to move back to America and rebuild a life, usually without the financial resources that they had before they left. So that is a really big deal to me.
Like how many years on average do expats stay
Great question.
expatriated?
Yes, this is a great question. So actually, half of all expat assignments fail within the first year. Yes, and oh man, I wish I had the numbers in front of me right now. But for Spain specifically, like Spain is a hot spot at the moment. Lots of people moving to Spain. But it's like, I think it's something around 70 or 80% move back within the first 3 years. That's a huge percentage of people. In Korea, we always joked about it being like the 3-year curse. People would move back at 3 years or 6 years. So it's like, if you make it past your first year, then you're going to be capped at 3. If you make it past 3, then you move back at 6.
I mean, what's wrong with moving for like a year though?
Nothing is wrong with moving for a year. If that's what you go in thinking, because I mean, that's what I went in thinking was, I'm going to move for a year, and then it ended up being 6, right? So there is nothing wrong with that. What I've seen though, a lot, both in Southern Africa and in Korea, is that the opposite happens, where people move thinking that they're going to be there for 10 years, and then they don't make it past year 1. So that's really I don't want to say the danger, but the risk. So that's the risk, because if you think about what it takes to move to a completely different country, it is deeply disrupting. And so if you have to do that twice in 1 year and you're not mentally prepared for that, emotionally, financially, if you don't have the supports in place, it can take a long time to recover.
See. Are there any like hazards of moving? Do you guys like cover insurance?
Yeah. So there's a lot of different insurance. Ooh, sorry, that light was very bad. Um, there's a few different insurances that you can get. So there's like medical insurance and travel insurance. And there's a few like good companies. Alliance is one of them. Safety Wing is a good company as well. So there's things like that in place. But for most people, especially since the bulk of clients I have, they're moving to Korea, they're going to get to Korea and be in the national health, the NHIS, like the National Health Insurance System. So they don't have to worry about medical insurance. And then as far as like renters insurances and car insurance and things like that, that's really a country by country basis thing. So you do that case by case. You know, it's not something I'm like, okay, now you need this and this and this and this and this.
You're muffled out a little bit.
Oh no!
I don't know.
Let me know when you can hear me.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Just case by case. We just do it case by case.
Yeah. What are you, do you miss like living abroad? Like what are your goals going forward?
I miss it every single day. Have you heard of that book, Crying in H Mart? That feels like the theme of my life at this moment, because I can't go to H Mart without actually crying. Because I'm like, oh man, I can't watch K-dramas without just getting really emotional. I really, really miss Korea.
Okay.
But I know that this won't be like where I land, you know, like Las Vegas is just a chapter. It's not my whole life. So definitely the goal is to land back overseas for ever, I would say. but yeah, it really just depends on really my fiance's job, like where we land. But it will always be in my life. I don't see myself like settling in the States, you know.
Y'all are together in Las Vegas, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
I see. Okay.
We are here, yes.
Do you work from like an office, home
This is
office?
my office. Do you see it? Very, no.
Very
For
nice.
WhereTu, for WhereTu. Well, really, I do like I do marketing work as well for a company, and that's all remote. So all of the work that I do is completely remote, which is a huge blessing because with this kind of lifestyle, you never know where you're going to be. So I'm able to kind of just take work with me wherever.
A random question.
Hmm.
Do you travel while, now that you're back, say home in the States, do you travel while you're in Las Vegas?
Oh, yes, all the time. I travel a lot because I grew up in Tennessee, so on the opposite side of the country, and didn't really get to discover this side of the country, right? So I've been to like California and Utah and different places here in Nevada and Arizona. I have also been back to Korea since I moved here already. And then I'll be in Europe next month. So I'm trying to take advantage of all of the opportunity I have to travel this area because I don't know, when life will bring me back. So yeah,
Do you work while traveling?
I do. I do. But for me, a lesson that I learned in Africa was pacing. I think a lot of my friends really were so good at that, and they wouldn't just take like, in America, and I think in Korea as well, there's like oh, we take a holiday for a weekend or we go for a week. But when I travel, I'm like 3 weeks, a month, if I'm going to be somewhere, I want to be there. And so I'm able to not feel as rushed when I travel, and so working doesn't feel like as disrupting, I guess. But there's no way if I was like, if I'm going somewhere for a weekend, I'm not working. Definitely not.
Um, what like instilled your love of travel or like living abroad per se?
I grew up in the Southern Baptist Church, and the Southern Baptist Church has a lot of international missionaries. So as I was growing up, I saw all of these women. They would come to my Sunday school class or, like a Wednesday night service class, and they would bring the trifold poster boards with them. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like the science fair kind of poster boards. And they would have all these pictures of like different places in the world, and they would bring back food for us to try and different, like things, just like different kind of souvenir kind of things. And they would just tell stories of what their life is like living in this different country. And it was so inspiring to me, even from a young age. And it really was the only kind of concrete example I had in my life of seeing women travel at that point. And I decided from a very young age, that's what I want to do. Like I want to see the world. Like Samantha Brown, seeing her on TV, my gosh. I loved watching the Travel Channel, Anthony Bourdain, incredible. So there were all of these people that I really connected with. And then my dad, he also traveled so much for his job growing up and when I was growing up. And when he would come back, he would bring recipes with him. So he would always try to make something that he had tasted while he was wherever he was. And that was just like such a fun thing for me growing up. And I always knew like, I want to do that. I want to discover, I want to go, I want to travel.
Where in Europe are you going?
I'm going to England and will end up in Italy, and I'm still trying to figure out like what the in between looks like for that. Like, am I gonna visit some countries in between? Am I gonna just go from one to the other? I'm also, I don't plan anything. I know that that's bad advice. Like, that's really bad. I am not an itinerary girl. I buy my plane tickets and then I figure it out as I go. So that's what I'm gonna do this time too.
Do you travel alone or with your husband?
Both, both, yeah. But I have grown to love solo travel more and more. At first, I was really scared of it, and now I've been to, I think, like 6 or 7 countries alone. And
I did
yeah,
a bit of traveling myself when I was younger, but I'm hoping to do like, I started traveling like last year again, so let's see if I can do that.
you can do it. Do you know about Nomad Her?
I do. I know the founder actually.
You do? Okay. Yes, they are such an inspiring community, and when I was in Korea, I got to be involved with them with like a few of their events.
Okay.
And
Yeah, Yojang,
yeah.
I know her.
Oh my gosh, yes. I want, oh man, while I was in Korea, I was like, oh, please let me find a job with them. Like, please let me land a job with them. But they couldn't do, yeah, it just didn't work out. So,
Okay, okay.
but I'm still a huge fan.
Yeah, I mean, I thought about using it myself. Now
Yeah.
that I'm like, I met a couple of women in Seoul that, um, were really into solo traveling. So that kind of inspired me to like kind of venture out again into solo
Yeah.
travel, which I haven't really done since like college, to be honest.
Wow, even that you did it in college is impressive. Like, I was way too scared then. I
I
was
know,
way
I
too
know.
scared.
I feel like I'm like as I get older, I get like less and less adventurous, which is really sad.
Yeah.
But
No, I get that. It takes a lot of energy, to be honest. And when you are like the older you get, the more responsibility it feels like you have. So you have to like build in the time and energy to be adventurous and travel. It has to be like an intentional thing. And yeah, I get that. I have to, even me, like I have to force myself to remember that I love it and that it's something that makes me feel more like myself, and I have to prioritize it. So I get that.
well, thank you so much for joining us, Anna.
Thank
It was a
you.
pleasure having you on.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'm so glad we got to chat after all these years.
Yeah, for sure. And where can everyone find you?
Yes, you can find me at wheretu.com, WHERETU.com, or on any social platform at wheretu.abroad if you want to follow me there.
Great, great. All right, thanks, Anna.
Thank you.